So I want to come to scenario number 4, which is the Maha mess scenario. This is the scenario I don't know whether I'm dreading or loving, because if it happens, there'll be non-stop live coverage for days on end like there was after the chaotic government formation in 2019. But the flip side is that would really not be good for the state of Maharashtra, because any state deserves a clean, clear government which can get on with the job of governance, and there isn't this unnecessary jod-tod. So let me return on the Maha battlefield one last time. This is scenario number 4. I call this Maha mess. And Maha mess because you've got a scenario where neither hits the 130s or just about close to 130 odd and shorter. And you've got independents in these smaller parties 40 plus. And if that's the case, then it is basically these parties that will hold the levers to power. The VBA, the AIMM, they do better than people would have expected. In this scenario, you've got the 2019 style government formation where you potentially, I think Rajdeep alluded to it, the question of whether Ajit Pawar's MLAs or Ajit Pawar himself would want to switch back to the other side because suddenly he becomes key kingmaker. Or could some people from Sharad Pawar's party come across, and could one of these parties just collapse? It could happen on the other side with the Shinde Sena or with the UBT. In a Maha mess scenario, then it is a free-for-all. You can potentially have the Shinde Sena try to poach whatever happens on the other side with the UBT, or you could have Ajit Pawar trying to poach whatever they can from the Sharad Pawar faction. So this is scenario number 4. In such a scenario, the prospect of the imposition of president's rule also then comes into play. This is actually, no matter how much journalists may relish this possibility, it's actually a nightmare scenario and you don't want it for the people of Maharashtra. But we'll run 2 simulations here to try and convert this scenario, the Maha mess. Rajdeep's loving it. I see the smile on your face. Isme maza aayega, huh? You like this scenario, Rajdeep?
This election is so messy that Pradeep Gupta has hold on his, he says he's not going to release today exit poll of Maharashtra.
Yeah, because you see, I think, let me be honest, let me get Preeti in, because she travelled as much as I did, probably more into interior, Vidarbha and Marathwada. Did you get that sense of seat-by-seat contest? It wasn't as if there was one party that people were with or one individual. I think Eknath Shinde had a lot of popularity. That's true. One thing that stood out for me. No one had a bad word to say, which is why I think the Mahayuti may well have a bit of an edge in some parts. But did you get a sense that each constituency had some individual leader? It's an Amit Deshmukh or the Deshmukh family somewhere else. In another place, it could be the Mohite Patil family, Vikhe Patil. It's all these families running the show.
Well, Rajdeep, I primarily went to 2 regions, Vidarbha, Marathwada and a bit of western Maharashtra. But with what I saw, hyper-localized seat-by-seat election in each, what I thought were the biggest factors. Number 1, we speak so much of the Ladki Bahin Yojana. I do feel in Maharashtra, we cannot say that, women will vote as a monolith. That all women are going to go and vote for the Mahayuti just because the money is coming in. I do see a lot of women, especially in Vidarbha, identifying as farmers. The same women, when you cross over to Marathwada, identify with their caste identity, caste assertion. And you can see that. And, so in that sense, yes. Number 2, you're bang on when you say Eknath Shinde is popular. He seems to be at least gaining ground. When you ask people, they recognize him, Rajdeep, very quickly. He's registered in the minds of the people, and it's very strange because it's not just with the schemes that he's put forth, it's his body language, the way he carries himself, the way he communicates with his people. A lot of people even connect with that where Eknath Shinde is concerned. But number 3, Rajdeep, what I'd like to see is also how much is the agrarian distress. The agrarian distress, as you cross over to Marathwada, turns into caste assertion. As you cross over into Western Maharashtra, it turns into Pawar versus Pawar, a different kind of election. Okay. But yes, hyper-local seat-by-seat catchphrases which we heard, Apaksh. Apaksh would mean independent. Bhav is something you hear everywhere you go. Bhav would be what we spoke of soya bean, in terms of the price of that. So, a lot of that going in, but yes, more or less a hyper-local election seat by seat.
Okay, let's look at what might happen in the Maha mess scenario. I'm looking at 2 scenarios. Remember, the independents and others had just about 12% of the vote in the Lok Sabha election. So if the vote of the others goes up by 15% from that base of 12% to 27%, and half of this comes from the Maha Vikas Aghadi, half comes from the Mahayuti, which is the NDA. In that scenario, you've got the MVA at 106, the Mahayuti at 142. So this is advantageous to the Mahayuti. Even if the others do well, you've got the Mahayuti at 142 and MV at 106. If, however, we look at the second scenario, which is that others go up by 18%, and this vote comes 9% from the Vikas Aghadi and 9% from the Mahayuti. In this case, it's 136 and 103. So the net of all of this is that the chances of the Mahayuti being slightly ahead, now they're substantially ahead or slightly ahead, in most of these scenarios seems to be higher and brighter than the chances of the MVA being ahead.
Because conceptually, the opposition vote is getting split between MVA and so many independents and rebels. However, when we did the analysis, on 139 seats there are rebels of whatever significance, small or big. So they could play a role of the spoiler, and that's what would be the key.
Anish joins us from the Sharad Pawar faction of the NCP. We've done all these simulations. Do you want to tell us what your internal numbers are looking like? You work very closely with Supriya Sule and the party. So give us a sense of what your internal discussions at this moment are revealing to you.
You know, we've just reached the end of what seems like the longest election that Maharashtra has ever seen. I think we've ended what I like to call an 11-month-long election that started in January with no symbol and no future in terms of the predictions that we could make for the Lok Sabha. And we've done a fairly good job in May with these elections. We're winning 8 out of 10 seats. Let me tell you a couple of things that we're seeing, at least amongst our voters and what I'm hearing from the ground, right? One, this is a turnout election. Any party that is going to be able to get its most committed voters to the polling booths is the party that is going to be able to reap the biggest electoral rewards. And at least in Western Maharashtra and Marathwada, we're seeing a fairly significant advantage because we've managed to get our voters to the polling booths. Pawar Sahib has managed to hold a record number of 200 sabhas across the state. And because this is a local seat-by-seat election, these are going to make a significant impact. I think the most interesting thing I've seen in all
you
of
all
these
disappeared in that critical period between July and October, and especially after Haryana's defeat, you all seem to suddenly get demoralized, and there was the fight over seats. Many believe you've given the Shiv Sena, UBT 15 more seats than they should have got, and that could cost you if this is a close election.
No, Rajdeep, I think this has been an incredibly contentious seat-sharing agreement that has been reached, right, across both alliances. I don't think seat-sharing has been easy on either side. I think what has been working in our favor, unlike the Mahayuti, however, is that regardless of whether or not this was the right party or the right candidate to have been fielded in that seat, the vote transfer in the Mahavikas Aghadi, both the Lok Sabha elections and now, will be far better than the Mahayuti. So you're going to see that consolidation happen regardless of whether or not the candidate selection was perfect, as you pointed out. Okay. So I don't think that's a fairly big concern. As for whether we took a break, I don't think so. I think Pawar Sahib started 2 days after the Lok Sabha elections and continued onward and upward throughout till the last day of campaigning. So I don't see that there's been a lull in that momentum. Again, it's been a seat-by-seat election. Each one of our candidates, I think, have done a fairly good job of consolidating their original voter bases and working with alliance partners.
Okay.